Let me ask you a question that could define the next 5 years of your life. Somewhere in your future, it could be next month or next year, an economic, personal, or emotional winter is gathering. It is not a possibility, it is a certainty. When that storm hits and the cold winds of adversity begin to blow, will you be standing in a warm, well-stocked shelter you built yourself? Or will you be shivering outside, filled with the bitter regret of seasons wasted? The answer to that question is being decided by what you do today. Stay with me, and I will show you how to become the architect of your own salvation. Hello, and welcome. Have you ever felt a chill in the air, even on the warmest of summer days? A sudden, unseen frost that has nothing to do with the weather outside, but everything to do with the climate of your life. It is a subtle feeling, isn't it? A quiet, nagging sense that something is not quite right. A whisper of anxiety in a moment of peace. A shadow that flickers at the edge of your vision when you are standing in the brightest sunshine. This is the chill of an approaching winter. Not the winter of the calendar, marked by snow and ice and shortened days, but the winter of the soul, the winter of the human experience. It is a season that every single person who has ever lived has had to face. It is a season that you inevitably will have to face again and again. Tonight, we are not here to discuss trivial matters. We are not here for simple motivation that fades with the morning sun. We are here to discuss the fundamental, unchanging laws of life. And the first, the most profound, and the most critical law to understand is this: winter will always come. This is not a message of pessimism. It is a message of reality. And embracing reality is the first step toward building a life of substance, strength, and profound success. Because reality, once accepted, can be prepared for. And the one who is prepared for the winter is the one who will ultimately own the spring. Let us begin by understanding the nature of this powerful season. Winter is not a single event. It is a category of experience. It is a metaphor for the periods in our lives defined by struggle, by scarcity, by challenge, and by the apparent absence of growth. It wears many faces, and it is crucial that we learn to recognize them all. First, there is the economic winter. This is perhaps the most obvious. It is the winter of a failing business, the loss of a job, a market that turns against you. It is the phone call you dread, the letter in the mail that you are afraid to open. It is the chilling reality of more month than money. It's the frost that settles on a promising venture, freezing its progress overnight. It's the harsh wind of technological change that makes a once valuable skill obsolete. The economic winter tests our resourcefulness, our resilience, and our ability to adapt. It asks the brutal question: have you stored anything away for a time like this? Then there is the relational winter. This form is often more painful, more personal. It is the winter of a friendship that has grown cold and distant. It is the deafening silence in a home where communication has ceased. It is the profound loneliness one can feel even when surrounded by people. It is the sharp, icy sting of betrayal from someone you trusted implicitly. A relational winter can be a sudden blizzard, a shocking event that shatters a family or a partnership. Or it can be a slow, creeping freeze, where warmth and intimacy erode so gradually that you barely notice until the ice is inches thick. This winter tests our capacity for forgiveness, our courage to communicate, and our wisdom to know when to mend a connection and when to let it go. And then there is the personal winter. This is the internal season, the battle fought within the private confines of our own mind and spirit. It is the winter of burnout, when the fire of ambition dwindles to a faint ember. It is the winter of disillusionment, when the goals you once pursued with passion now seem hollow and meaningless. It is the winter of health, when the body, our most precious vehicle, begins to fail us. It is the winter of the spirit, a dark night of the soul where doubt and fear become your constant companions. This personal winter is perhaps the most challenging of all, for there is nowhere to run from it. It tests the very core of our character, our philosophy, and our faith in ourselves and in the future. We must understand that these winters are not isolated. They are interconnected. An economic winter often brings a chill into our relationships. A personal winter of burnout will inevitably affect our performance and our finances. They are part of the same ecosystem of challenge that defines the human journey. Now, one of the most sophisticated and often misunderstood aspects of this law is what I call the principle of seasonal intrusion. You see, we tend to think of life in linear terms. Spring, then summer, then fall, then winter. But life is not so neat. Winter does not always wait its turn. It is an opportunist. It can and it will intrude upon any other season. Think of it. You are in your spring, the glorious season of opportunity. You have just started a new business, embarked on a new relationship, or committed to a new path of self-improvement. The soil is fertile, the seeds of effort are planted, and hope is in the air. And then a winter storm hits. An unexpected lawsuit freezes your business assets. A past insecurity resurfaces and poisons your new relationship. A sudden wave of self-doubt paralyzes your progress. This is winter in spring. It is a test of your resolve. It asks, is your new beginning built on a foundation strong enough to withstand a premature frost? If you do not respond with swift and intelligent action, the season of opportunity will be stolen from you, leaving you with another full year of waiting. Or perhaps you are in your summer, the season of diligent cultivation. Your business is growing, your family is thriving. You are tending to your garden, protecting your progress from the inevitable weeds of complacency and the pest of distraction. And then a blast of winter descends. A key employee quits. A new aggressive competitor enters your market. A crisis emerges within your family that demands all of your attention and energy. This is winter in summer. It is a test of your vigilance and your defenses. It reminds us that growth is not guaranteed. It must be protected. It asks, have you built fences of good habits and sound principles around the things you value? And perhaps most cruelly, winter can intrude upon your autumn, the season of harvest. You are about to reap the rewards of your long and arduous labor. The deal is about to close. The promotion is about to be announced. The finish line is in sight. And then a premature winter arrives. The market crashes the day before your company goes public. A misunderstanding dissolves a partnership just as it was about to become profitable. A project you have poured your life into is canceled at the 11th hour. This is winter and autumn. It is the most painful of all intrusions. It is a test of your faith and your ability to endure profound disappointment. It leaves you with crops or results which are of little value, and asks the most difficult question of all. After all this, will you find the strength to plant again? Understanding this principle of seasonal intrusion is critical. It shatters the naive belief that life is a straight line of progress. It teaches us that we must be prepared not just for the scheduled winter, but for the unexpected frost, the sudden storm, the unseasonable chill at all times. And this brings us to the great and central point of our discussion tonight. The arrival of winter, whether it comes on schedule or intrudes upon another season, is an event that is entirely outside of your control. It is an inevitable, impersonal, unchanging law of the universe, like gravity or the rising of the sun. You can no more prevent the winters of your life than a farmer can prevent the turning of the earth. But what you can control, what is 100% within your power, is your state of readiness. The arrival of winter finds every one of us in one of two and only two categories. There is no middle ground here. There is no third option. You are either prepared or you are unprepared. Let me be clear what I mean by prepared. I am not simply talking about having money in the bank, although that is part of it. I am not simply talking about having a roof over your head, although that is important. True preparation is not a matter of resources. It is a matter of philosophy. It is a state of mind. It is a collection of disciplines practiced daily. The prepared individual is the one who used the spring to plant abundantly, the one who used the summer to guard their crops diligently, the one who used the fall to harvest with gratitude and without apology, the one who built their character, their skills, their relationships, and their resources when the sun was shining. The unprepared individual is the one who is casual in the spring, distracted in the summer, and disappointed in the fall. The one who mistook a season of opportunity for a lifetime of ease. And how you experience winter is determined entirely by which of these two people you have chosen to be. For the unprepared, winter is a season of horror. It is a time of regret, of fear, of blame. It is a time when love and harmony give way to accusations and anger. It is a long, desperate wait for a spring that seems a lifetime away. But for the prepared, for the one who understood the law and acted accordingly, winter is yet another season of opportunity. It is a time for rest, but not excessive rest. It is a time for reflection. It is a time for planning. It is a time for gathering strength for the coming spring. It is a time to enjoy the fruits of your labor with those you love, to share the warmth of a fire you had the foresight to build. For the prepared, winter is not an ending. It is a vital and productive transition. So, as we stand here tonight at the threshold of this deep exploration, the first question you must ask yourself is not, how can I avoid winter? That is the question of a child. It is a futile and unproductive question. The question of the master, the question of the architect of a great life is this: who will I be when the winter comes? Will you be the one who curses the cold, or the one who has stored the wood for the fire? Will you be the one crushed by the weight of regret, or the one fortified by the power of discipline? The choice is yours, and it is a choice that is made not in the heart of the storm, but in the quiet, sunlit days of spring and summer. Tonight, we will not learn the futile art of avoiding winter. We are here to learn the profound and life-altering skill of mastering it. We are here to learn how to turn the harshest of seasons into your greatest season of strength, of wisdom, and of unseen growth. The storm is coming. The question is, are you ready to learn how to build your house on a rock? Let us begin. In our last discussion, we established an unchanging fundamental law of the universe. Winter will always come. We are not defined by the arrival of the storm, but by our preparedness for it. And this preparedness places each of us at any given moment onto one of two distinct paths. This is the great fork in the road of human experience. It is a choice that confronts every one of us, every single day, in 1,000 small ways. It is not a choice between rich and poor, educated and uneducated, lucky and unlucky. Those are merely circumstances. This is a choice of philosophy, a choice of character. It is the choice to become the architect of your life or to remain the drifter. Let us walk down these two paths together. Let us observe the choices made, the disciplines kept or ignored, the philosophies embraced or discarded. For in understanding these two figures, you will inevitably see a reflection of yourself. Let us begin where all potential begins, in the glorious season of spring. Spring is the season of opportunity. It is the fresh page, the clean slate, the fertile ground. The air is filled with the promise of what could be. For both the architect and the drifter, the opportunity is the same. The sun shines equally upon them. The soil is equally receptive to the seed. The difference is not in the season, the difference is in the person. The drifter greets the spring with a casual embrace. His philosophy is one of convenience. His mantra is, there's plenty of time. He lives on what I call Someday Isle, that mythical place in the future where all hard work will get done, all difficult calls will be made, and all good intentions will magically become achievements. He sees the work to be done, but he is seduced by the allure of ease. The pain of disciplined, consistent effort feels too high a price to pay today. So, what does he do? He plants a few seeds. He makes a few of the easier phone calls. He reads a chapter of a book, gets a momentary feeling of accomplishment, and puts it down. He confuses motion with action. He confuses intention with results. His efforts are governed not by a plan, but by his mood. If he feels like working, he works. If he doesn't, he rationalizes his inactivity. His philosophy is one of minimums. What's the least I can do to get by? He sows sparingly, hoping for a miracle harvest. He operates on the flawed assumption that this perfect spring weather will last forever. Now, let us turn to the architect. The architect sees the same spring, the same opportunity, but through a different lens, the lens of reality. The architect's philosophy is one of intelligent effort and foresight. He understands that spring is a window, not an endless horizon. It is a period of intense, strategic action. He doesn't just plant, he cultivates a plan. Before the first seed is sown, he has studied the soil. He knows what he wants to harvest in the autumn, and he works backward from there. His actions are not random, they are purposeful. But here is the key to his philosophy. The architect practices the law of generous sowing. He plants far more than he thinks he will need. Why? Because the architect in his wisdom is a realist. He knows that some seeds will be taken by the birds. Those are the unexpected setbacks, the deals that fall through for no good reason. He knows some seeds will fall on rocky soil. Those are the unproductive ventures, the ideas that simply don't take root. He knows that some will fail due to lack of rain or too much sun. Those are the external market forces, the circumstances utterly beyond his control. So, he plants with these realities in mind. He makes the extra calls. He reads the extra book. He puts in the extra hour. He pays the price of discipline in the spring, willingly. He feels the same fatigue as the drifter, the same temptation to put things off until someday. But his philosophy is stronger than his mood. He understands that the pain of discipline weighs ounces, while the pain of regret, as we will soon see, weighs tons. He is not just preparing a garden for a perfect summer. He is building a fortress of abundance to withstand a guaranteed winter. Now the sun climbs higher in the sky, and the season changes. We enter the long, hot days of summer. Summer is the season of protection and cultivation. It is the time when the initial efforts of spring must be guarded and nurtured, for with growth, inevitably come the threats to that growth. The weeds, the pests, the scorching sun, the sudden storms. The drifter enters the summer with a dangerous naivety. Having put in his minimal effort in the spring, he now expects the garden to grow on its own. He is easily distracted. The immediate pleasures of the day pull him away from the tedious, repetitive work of maintenance. And what happens in his garden? The subtle weeds begin to appear. What are these weeds? They are the small compromises, the slightly negative attitude, the little white lie, the habit of gossip, the influence of pessimistic friends. On their own, each weed seems insignificant, a minor issue, but the drifter lets them be. He does not see the cumulative danger. Day by day, these subtle weeds grow, quietly choking the life out of the fragile crops he planted in the spring. When the pests of real adversity arrive, he is surprised. He is offended. He spends his energy complaining about the pests rather than building a fence. He blames the heat. He blames the lack of rain. He blames the very garden itself. His philosophy is one of reaction and complaint. He wishes for a better summer instead of working to become a better gardener. Now, let us observe the architect in that same summer sun. The architect expected the weeds. He anticipated the pests. His philosophy is one of vigilance. He knows that his garden, his career, his relationships, his very character are under constant threat from the forces of neglect and entropy. So, he is diligent. He walks his rows every single day. He pulls the weeds of negativity from his mind the moment they sprout. He builds fences of principle, clear boundaries that protect him from the pests of negative influence and unethical shortcuts. He nurtures his crops, his good habits, his key relationships, his growing skills with the water of daily attention. The architect does not pray for a summer without storms. That is a child's prayer. Instead, he works to deepen the roots of his crops so that when the storms of life inevitably come, they can bend without breaking. He understands a profound truth. The same sun that helps his crops grow also helps the weeds grow. The same rain that nourishes his plants can also flood his fields. He sees adversity not as a personal insult, but as an impersonal test. Summer, for him, is a season of strengthening. He is not just growing a crop, he is forging resilience. The season turns once more. The air becomes crisp, the leaves begin to turn, and we arrive at the great season of truth, autumn. Autumn is the harvest. It is the moment of reckoning. There are no more excuses. There are no more second chances for this cycle. The results are in. It is the law of life. We reap what we have sown. There is no escaping this. The drifter stands before his field in the autumn, and he is filled with shocked disappointment. His harvest is meager, barely enough to get by. The crops are thin and weak. And what is his response? Does he look back at his casual spring and his distracted summer and take responsibility? Rarely. Instead, his philosophy of blame goes into overdrive. He looks at his own pathetic results and calls it bad luck. Then he looks over the fence at the architect's overflowing barn and calls it unfair. He says, well, he got lucky, or he must have had some advantage. To admit that his harvest is the direct and predictable result of his philosophy would be to admit that his entire approach to life is flawed, and that is a truth too painful for the drifter to bear. So he clings to the comforting lie of blame and victimhood. Now, let us witness the architect in the autumn. He stands before his abundant fields, and he feels not surprise, but a sense of calm confirmation. His harvest is the natural consequence of his disciplined spring and his vigilant summer. It is not a miracle, it is a result. It is the law made manifest. And notice his attitude. He reaps his reward without apology, but also without arrogance. He doesn't apologize for his success because he knows he has earned it, but he is not arrogant because he understands the process. He is grateful for the opportunity of spring, grateful for the strength he developed in the summer, and grateful for the law of cause and effect. He also understands another deep truth. The purpose of the autumn harvest is not just to provide for today. It is the resource that will see him through the coming winter, and it contains the very seeds for the next spring. His success is not an end point. It is part of a continuous upward cycle of growth. And this brings us finally to the season we have been preparing for all this time. The inevitable, the unforgiving, the revealing season of winter. For the drifter, who stands with an empty pantry and a heart full of blame, winter is a season of unmitigated horror. His world shrinks. The casual optimism of spring is a distant, mocking memory. He is now faced with what I call the cold arithmetic of regret. The heavy, crushing weight of all the things he should have done, all the calls he could have made, all the effort he failed to expend. The silence in his home is heavy with unspoken accusations. Fear is his constant companion. Fear of the future. Fear of his own inadequacy. He spends his days in the grip of that most useless of all human emotions, regret. He is a prisoner of his past, waiting desperately for a spring he has not earned. But what of the architect? When the first snows of winter fall, he is not afraid, he is ready. He retreats into the warm, well-stocked shelter he has built for himself. A shelter built not just of wood and stone, but of discipline, foresight, and character. His winter is not an ending. It is a productive, strategic sanctuary. The fire is lit with the wood of his past efforts. His table is filled with the fruits of his harvest. But he is not idle. This is his season of unseen growth. He uses the time to read the books, to sharpen his mind. He uses the quiet to plan the next spring, refining his blueprints, learning from his mistakes. He uses the warmth of his home to deepen his relationships with those he loves, sharing the abundance he created. For the architect, winter is a season of renewal. It is a time of gratitude, a time of quiet confidence, and a time of strategic preparation for an even greater spring that is to come. So you see, the architect and the drifter are not two different kinds of people. They are two different sets of choices. They are two opposing philosophies, battling for control within each and every one of us. The voice of the drifter is the voice of temptation, ease, and procrastination. The voice of the architect is the voice of discipline, responsibility, and long-term vision. One path leads to a winter of regret, the other to a winter of renewal. The season you are currently in is not what matters most. What matters is the philosophy you are applying today, because the choices you make in your spring, summer, and fall will absolutely determine the quality of your winter. The question is not, which one are you? The question is, which one will you choose to be starting now? In our last segment, we walked the two distinct paths of the architect and the drifter. We saw how the disciplined choices of spring and summer lead to the architect's winter of renewal, and how the casual neglect of those same seasons leads to the drifter's winter of horror. Now, we must ask a crucial question. What happens inside the mind of the drifter when the cold reality of his winter finally sets in? When he is sitting in the cold, empty room of his own making with an empty pantry and a calendar that shows the next spring a lifetime away, what does he do? Does he turn inward? Does he engage in the difficult, painful work of self-analysis? Does he look in the mirror and say, the fault is not in my stars, but in myself? No. That is the path of the architect, a path the drifter has long since abandoned. Instead, the unprepared mind, in a desperate act of self-preservation, turns to two powerful and insidious poisons. They are the twin pillars of a wasted life. They are the chains that keep the drifter locked in a repeating cycle of mediocrity and despair. These two poisons are blame and escape. Tonight, we will perform an anatomy lesson. We will dissect these two forces with unflinching honesty. For in understanding the anatomy of this disease, we can begin to find the cure. Let us start with the first and most pervasive poison, the anatomy of blame. Blame is the drifter's primary defense mechanism. It is a psychological shield he raises to protect his fragile ego from the devastating truth of his own responsibility. It is far easier to be the noble victim of an unjust world than it is to be the author of your own failure. To accept responsibility is to accept the need for change, and change is painful. To blame is to remain static, and in the short term, that feels safe. Blame is a story. It is a carefully constructed narrative where the drifter is always the protagonist and the forces of the world are the antagonists aligned against him. And this narrative has a recurring cast of villains. Let us examine the drifter's primary scapegoats. First, there is the most grandiose form of blame, blaming the system. You hear this language everywhere. The government is the problem. The economy is rigged. The corporation doesn't care. The system is designed to keep the little guy down. This is the most seductive form of blame because it is so vast and impersonal. By making the enemy an enormous, faceless entity, the drifter absolves himself of any and all personal action. After all, what can one person do against the system? And so, he is justified in his inaction. He can sit in his cold room, warmed by the fire of his own righteous indignation, while accomplishing nothing. When blaming the system becomes too abstract, the drifter moves his aim closer to home. He begins blaming his circle. This is a more intimate, more poisonous form of blame. My boss is holding me back. My spouse doesn't support me. My business partner made a bad decision. My family filled my head with limiting beliefs. Suddenly, the people who are closest to him become the architects of his misfortune. He fails to see that his boss might be responding to his lack of performance. He fails to recognize that his spouse's lack of support might be born from years of his own broken promises. He conveniently forgets his own role in the business decisions. This blame transforms relationships into cages, turning potential allies into perceived enemies. It is a profound act of betrayal, not just to others, but to the truth itself. And when blaming the present is not enough, the drifter makes his final, most tragic move. He blames the past. He forges the events of his history into the bars of a permanent prison. It's because of my upbringing. It's because I didn't get the right education. It's because of that one mistake I made 10 years ago. The past, for the architect, is a school. It is a library of lessons, both painful and powerful. But for the drifter, the past is a couch. It is a place to lie down and surrender. He uses his history not as a source of wisdom, but as an alibi for his present inaction. This constant act of blaming manifests in a specific activity, unproductive conversation. This is the language of the drifter. It is the long, circular, commiserating talk about how things ought to be, about why things aren't fair. And you must understand, this conversation produces a dangerous, dulling euphoria. It feels good. To find others who will nod their heads and agree that you are indeed a victim of an unfair world is incredibly validating. It creates a temporary warmth, a sense of community, a community of the complaining. This conversation is a powerful addiction. It feels like you are doing something about your problems, but you are merely describing them. You are mistaking analysis for action. It is a treadmill of talk that goes nowhere, all while giving the illusion of movement. It is the primary activity in the drifter's wasted winter. But eventually, the fire of indignation dies down, the validation from others fades, and the cold, hard reality of the room begins to seep back in. The shield of blame is not enough to keep out the chill of truth forever. And when that happens, the drifter turns to the second poison, the mechanisms of escape. If blame is the shield, escape is the anesthetic. It is the act of deliberately numbing the mind to the pain of your reality. It is the surrender of consciousness. And in our modern world, the mechanisms of escape are everywhere, available 24 hours a day. Let us dissect the most common forms. The first is the flicker of distraction. In the past, this was primarily the television, but today it is a digital deluge. It is the endless scroll on a social media feed. It is the binge watching of a series for 8 hours straight. It is the rabbit hole of online videos and celebrity news. The goal of this activity is to induce a state of low-grade hypnosis. It is to fill every single moment of silence where a productive or a painful thought might occur. The drifter is not watching to learn or to be inspired. He is watching to forget. He is engaging in the consumption of borrowed lives, the curated successes, dramas, and experiences of others, precisely to avoid the difficult work of authoring his own. It is a digital anesthetic that numbs the pain of an unlived life. When the flicker of distraction is not potent enough, the drifter often turns to a more powerful anesthetic, the chemical mirage. This is the escape of alcohol, of drugs, of any substance that promises to change your state without you having to change yourself. This is the desperate search for an external solution to an internal problem. The drifter seeks confidence in a bottle, peace in a pill, happiness in a puff of smoke, but it is all a mirage. It is a loan of positive feeling taken from tomorrow with a crushing interest rate. The temporary relief it provides only deepens the debt of despair the next day, making the need for another escape even more urgent. It is a vicious downward spiral disguised as a momentary reprieve. Finally, there is one of the most sophisticated and morally corrosive forms of escape, the poison of gossip. This is the escape of the character assassin. Here is the dark psychology at work. When the drifter feels small and insignificant in his own winter, he finds a momentary sense of superiority by finding and magnifying the flaws in others. He especially loves to gossip about the architects, the successful, the ambitious, the ones who seem to have mastered the seasons. He will say, "Oh, he may be successful, but did you hear about his personal life?" Or, "She got that promotion, but I know for a fact she cut corners." This act allows him to mentally level the playing field. It is a dishonest attempt to tear others down to his level because he lacks the courage and discipline to build himself up to theirs. Gossip is the ultimate act of intellectual and moral cowardice. It is the admission that you have given up on your own story, so you now find your only pleasure in defacing the stories of others. So there you have it, blame and escape. The shield and the anesthetic. This is the tragic internal world of the person living through a wasted winter. It is a prison locked from the inside. But if there is a prison, there must be a key. If there is a poison, there must be an antidote. The antidote is a single powerful and profoundly uncomfortable concept. It is the foundation upon which all success, all growth, and all self-respect is built. The antidote is radical personal responsibility. It is the decision to put down the shield of blame and to refuse the anesthetic of escape. It is the courage to walk over to the uncomfortable mirror and look, really look, at the person responsible for your life, you. The drifter spends his entire life avoiding mirrors. The architect begins his day by looking into one. Responsibility is the act of reclaiming your power. As long as you are blaming the system, your circle, or your past, you are declaring yourself to be powerless. You are a ship without a rudder, tossed about by the winds of circumstance. But the moment, the very instant you say, "I am responsible," you take your hand and place it firmly back on the rudder of your life. It is the most liberating act a human being can perform. This is the work of the productive winter. To stop staring at the effect, the cold, the emptiness, and to begin the courageous audit of the cause. To trace your steps back through your memories, autumn, summer, and spring, and identify the points of neglect, the moments of casualness, the weeds you allowed to grow. This process is not about self-hatred. It is about self-awareness. It is the shift from the powerless question, why is this happening to me, to the powerful question, given that this is my reality, what will I do about it now? The wasted winter is a cycle of blame and escape that leads only to a colder, longer winter. The productive winter begins with the single, revolutionary act of taking responsibility. It is the first step out of the cold. It is the decision to stop cursing the darkness and to begin the difficult, noble work of learning how to build a fire. Your winter is here. The mirror is waiting. The question is, do you have the courage to look? We have just returned from a difficult place. We have stood in the cold, empty room of the drifter's winter. We have dissected the twin poisons of blame and escape. And we have faced the uncomfortable, unflinching truth in the mirror of responsibility. To look in that mirror and accept what you see, to take ownership of your circumstances, is the single most courageous act of a human life. It is the moment you stop being a passive victim of your story and become its active author. But it also begs a terrifying and ultimately liberating question. What now? Having refused the false comfort of blame and the dulling anesthetic of escape, what is the real work that must be done? This, my friends, is where the true journey begins. This is the moment we execute the great pivot. We consciously and deliberately cease to see winter as a punishment to be endured, and we begin to see it for what it truly is. A sanctuary for the wise, a laboratory for the strong, a workshop for the ambitious. Winter is not a season of stagnation. It is the great season of unseen growth. The world outside may be frozen and still, but within the mind and spirit of the architect, winter is the busiest, most productive season of all. Think of a great tree in the dead of winter. To the casual observer, it appears lifeless, barren, a mere skeleton against the gray sky. But beneath the surface, hidden in the cold, dark soil, the most critical work of its life is being done. The roots are deepening, seeking new sources of nourishment, strengthening their grip on the earth, preparing a powerful foundation for the explosive growth that will inevitably, by law, come in the spring. This is our task in winter, to do the deep, foundational, internal work that makes all external success not just possible, but predictable. This is not a time for hibernation. It is a time for construction. Welcome to the Architect's Workshop. Here, we will master the 4 foundational pillars of a productive winter. Let us begin with the first pillar, the architect's blueprint, the work of planning and strategy. The drifter spends his winter complaining about his past results. The architect spends his winter designing his future ones. This noble work begins with a process I call the brutal honesty audit. The architect takes out the blueprints of his previous year, his goals, his plans, his finances, his relationships, and spreads them out on the table under a bright, unforgiving light. And with the dispassionate eye of a master craftsman, he analyzes them. There is no room for ego in this workshop. There is no space for excuses. There is only a relentless, methodical search for the truth. He asks the hard, essential questions. Where, precisely, did this plan fail? Was it a flaw in the initial strategy, or was it a failure in my daily execution? Which of my habits served my ambition, and which ones betrayed it? What was the single greatest waste of my time, my energy, my capital? Where was I ignorant, and where was I merely lazy? What is the one skill that, if I had possessed it, would have changed the outcome of the entire year? This is not an exercise in self-punishment. Please, understand this. It is a vital exercise in data collection. To the architect, failure is not a personal indictment. It is not a sign of worthlessness. It is simply data. It is the feedback from reality that tells him where the design is weak, where the materials are flawed, where the foundation needs to be reinforced. He treats his life and career as a scientist, treats an experiment, and in doing so, he removes the emotion and extracts the lesson. Once the audit is complete, the second phase of this pillar begins, designing the next spring. This is the work of proactive creation. It is not a simple to-do list. It is the act of designing a better version of yourself and a better plan for that self to execute. The architect, having learned from the cracks in the old foundation, now designs a stronger, more beautiful, more resilient structure. He asks, based on the data, what skills must I acquire before the thaw? What relationships must I cultivate or prune? What resources, financial or otherwise, must I put in place? Who do I need to become to make this new plan a reality? And he writes it all down. He understands a profound principle. A goal that is not written down is merely a fantasy. It is a wisp of smoke. The act of writing, of putting pen to paper, is an act of creation. It crystallizes thought. It transforms a vague wish into a concrete, visible target. The drifter lives in a world of wishes. The architect lives in a world of written plans. This is the first great work of Winter: to honestly assess the past and to intelligently design the future. Now we move to the second pillar, forging the mind, the work of study and learning. The drifter, in his winter, numbs his mind with distraction. The architect sharpens it. He understands that the most valuable asset he will ever possess is the quality of his own thinking. The physically inactive season of winter is the perfect time for the most intense mental activity. But we must be clear about what we mean by study. The purpose of winter study is not the mere accumulation of information. It is not about winning a trivia game. The purpose of study, the true meaning of education, is to learn to behave as you do not now behave. It is about transformation, not just information. It is about allowing new knowledge to fundamentally change your philosophy, which in turn will change your actions, which will, by law, change your results. So, what does the architect study? He builds his mental library. He reads the biographies of great men and women, not for entertainment, but to study how they handled their winters. He learns that every great success story is also a story of great adversity. This gives him perspective and courage. He studies the practical arts, economics, negotiation, marketing, psychology. He seeks to understand the unchanging laws of the marketplace and the human mind. He also studies the timeless arts, philosophy, history, poetry. He seeks to understand the unchanging laws of the human heart. He becomes a student of success. He finds the architects in his field, the people who have already built the towers he wishes to build, and he studies their blueprints. He learns that success leaves clues. He replaces envy with curiosity. This is the direct antidote to the poison we discussed earlier. Blame, gossip, and fear are all born of ignorance. Study is the cure. It replaces emotional opinions with informed knowledge. It replaces knee-jerk reactions with reasoned responses. The architect does not have time for the unproductive conversation of the ignorant because he is too busy in his library having a productive conversation with the wise. Now we must go deeper. From the blueprints of our plans and the library of our mind, we move to the very core of our being. We arrive at the third pillar, the inner forge, the work of introspection and character. This is the most difficult, most personal, and most important work of Winter. It is the forging of the soul. For what good is a brilliant blueprint and a well-stocked mind if the character of the builder is weak? A flawed character will undermine the most magnificent of plans. So, in the quiet of Winter, the architect does his inner housekeeping. He performs an audit of the self. He examines his anger and his judgment. He sees these emotions for what they are: luxuries he cannot afford. They are acids that corrode the container that holds them. They cloud judgment, they sever relationships, and they waste precious finite energy. Winter is the time to practice the high art of deliberation, to learn to see a situation from all sides before passing judgment, to understand before seeking to be understood. He examines his sincerity. He looks for the integrity gap, the space between the values he professes and the actions he actually takes. I value my health, he says, but his actions show otherwise. I value my family, he claims, but his time is spent elsewhere. Winter is the sacred time to close this gap, to align his daily habits with his deepest principles, to become one, whole, integrated person. And he develops one of the most valuable master-level skills of life, the art of getting along with imperfect people. The drifter is always complaining that the world is not perfect, that people let him down, he is a fool, for he is waiting for a world that will never exist. The architect is a genius because he learns to operate in the world as it is. He learns to find value in flawed human beings. He learns to build bridges with difficult personalities. He learns that you can learn something from everyone, even if it's what not to do. This leads to a related wisdom, the wisdom of what not to say. In the quiet of winter, the architect learns that true strength is often found in restraint. He learns what to overlook, what battles are not worth fighting, and when silence is the most powerful and dignified response, anyone can react. It takes character to thoughtfully respond. This is the work of the inner forge. It is the slow, often painful process of hammering out the impurities in our own character, so that we emerge in the spring not just with a better plan, but as a better person. This brings us to our final pillar, the one that gives meaning to all the others. The fourth pillar, the human connection, the work of contribution and legacy. A winter spent only on the self will ultimately feel empty. The plans, the study, the character, what is it all for? The drifter is obsessed with his own survival, his own comfort. The architect understands a higher law. A life is measured not by what it receives, but by what it gives. Therefore, the productive winter must include the work of human connection. The architect understands the profound truth that the teacher is always the greatest recipient of the lesson. When you seek to encourage, to teach, to uplift another person, you are reinforcing those very principles in your own mind and spirit. You become what you teach. So he invests his time in the two groups that need it most, the young and the old. He seeks out the young who have the fire and the energy, but lack the perspective of the seasons. His encouragement, his mentorship, his wisdom is a map that can save them from years of wandering in the wilderness of inexperience. In teaching them, he rediscovers the fundamentals and renews his own sense of purpose. He seeks out the old who have the deep wisdom of many seasons, but may be losing their hope or their sense of value. His attention, his respect, his willingness to listen is a profound validation of their life story. It is a reminder that their wisdom still matters. In listening to them, he gains perspective that cannot be found in any book. This is the ultimate purpose of the architect, to build a shelter so strong, so warm, so abundant, that its light and warmth spill out and offer comfort to others. A life focused only on the self is ultimately a small life, a fragile shelter. A life of contribution builds a legacy, a great house that stands long after the builder is gone. So this is the true purpose of winter. It is the joyful, focused, and noble work of a master in their workshop. It is the season to refine your plans, to forge your mind, to temper your character, and to deepen your connections. And this work is not done with a grim face of determination. It must be done with the spirit of the architect, with gratitude for the lessons of the past, with appreciation for the quiet of the present, and with a joyful, confident heart that knows with absolute certainty that even though the winds blow cold, the spring is coming. And this time, you will be ready. As we continue to explore this philosophy of the seasons, I want to take a brief moment to connect with you. If these ideas of preparation, responsibility, and personal growth resonate with you, if you believe in the power of building a better future by mastering the present, then I invite you to become a part of this community. By subscribing to this channel, you are not just getting videos. You are making a declaration that you are choosing to be an architect of your own life. Click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the lessons of the coming seasons. Thank you. Now, let's return to the heart of winter. We have journeyed far. We have navigated the architect's workshop and laid out the four great pillars of a productive winter: the strategic work of planning, the intellectual work of study, the moral work of introspection, and the legacy work of connection. We now possess the blueprints, the tools, and the raw materials to construct a magnificent life. But there is one final crucial element we must address. For you can have the finest workshop in the world, filled with the most exquisite tools, but if the spirit of the craftsman is broken, if their hands tremble with fear and their heart is frozen with despair, no masterpiece will ever be built. The ultimate battle of winter is not fought in the frozen fields of circumstance. It is fought in the vast, silent, and often treacherous landscape of the mind. Therefore, we must now turn our attention from the external work to the internal art, the art of forging a spring mentality in the very heart of winter. This is the ultimate skill. It is the psychological alchemy that separates survival from triumph. It is the ability to cultivate an internal sun that shines with unwavering warmth, even when the external world is a frozen wasteland. This is not about positive thinking in the shallow sense of the phrase. This is not about ignoring reality or chanting empty affirmations while the storm rages. That is the domain of the fool. This is about the disciplined, rigorous, and profoundly powerful cultivation of a mindset so resilient, so robust, that it can metabolize hardship and transform it into strength. This alchemy is composed of three foundational arts. Let us master them together. The first and most powerful alchemical art is the unconditional practice of gratitude. The drifter practices conditional gratitude. He is grateful when the sun is shining, when the harvest is plentiful, when the checks are clearing. His gratitude is a fair weather friend. It is a reaction to positive circumstances. But when the winter comes, his gratitude vanishes, replaced by the cold bitterness of complaint and entitlement. The architect, in his wisdom, understands that conditional gratitude is worthless. It is a house built on sand. He instead practices unconditional gratitude. This is not a feeling that comes and goes with the weather. It is a discipline. It is a fundamental choice. It is the very bedrock of a spring mentality. The architect is grateful not just despite the winter, but because of what the winter teaches. Let us deconstruct this profound practice. The architect is grateful for four things, especially in the cold. First, he is grateful for his achievements. This is the easiest form. In the winter, he looks back at the harvest he did manage to store, no matter how small. He acknowledges the work of his past self. This is not an act of ego. It is an act of self-respect. It is the fuel of confidence. He says to himself, I have faced difficulties before, and I have prevailed. I built this. I have evidence of my own capability. This gratitude for the past becomes the foundation of his belief in the future. Second, and this is a far more sophisticated idea, he is grateful for his lack of achievement. The drifter is tormented by what he does not have. The architect learns to be grateful for the hunger it creates. He understands a deep law of motivation. A full man does not hunt. A satisfied man does not strive. The emptiness, the gap between where he is and where he wants to be, is not a curse. It is a gift. It is the fertile void into which all future growth can occur. Gratitude for what is missing is gratitude for the drive to create, to build, to become more. Third, and this is where true strength is forged, the architect is grateful for adversity. The drifter curses the storm. The architect sees it as the gymnasium of his character. He knows that muscles do not grow in a state of comfort. They grow when they are torn and forced to rebuild stronger. He understands that steel is not forged in a cool room. It is forged in the searing heat of the fire and the violent blow of the hammer. Adversity is the fire. His disciplined response is the hammer. He is grateful for the very challenges that force him to become more resilient, more creative, more courageous. He does not wish for an easy life. He wishes for the strength to endure a difficult one. And finally, we arrive at the most advanced and liberating form of this practice. The architect is grateful for uncertainty. Uncertainty is the source of all the drifter's anxiety. He craves the false promise of a predictable, guaranteed future. To the architect, a certain future is a prison. If the future were completely known and guaranteed, there would be no room for growth, no space for free will, no possibility of creating a masterpiece better than the one he originally envisioned. Uncertainty is the field of infinite possibility. To be grateful for uncertainty is to be grateful for the freedom to create. It is the ultimate act of faith in his own ability to set the sail, no matter how the wind blows. This is the discipline of gratitude. It is a mental muscle that must be exercised daily, especially on the coldest days. It is the conscious choice to focus on the lesson, not the loss, on the opportunity, not the obstacle. This leads us to the second alchemical art, the disciplined power of imagination. The imagination is one of the most powerful forces available to a human being. It can be a workshop of creation or a torture chamber of the soul. The difference is in how it is used. The drifter has a powerful imagination, but he uses it for self-destruction. In the winter, his mind becomes a catastrophe simulator. He runs endless vivid simulations of every possible negative outcome. He rehearses arguments. He anticipates failures. He relives past mistakes in high definition. His imagination is a prison that keeps him locked in a cycle of anxiety and fear. He uses this incredible creative faculty to paint the walls of his own cell. The architect refuses to allow his mind to become a prison. He seizes control of his imagination and transforms it into his most powerful tool of creation. He understands that his mind cannot tell the difference between a vividly imagined experience and a real one. So, he engages in the disciplined rehearsal of a future reality. This is not idle daydreaming. It is strategic creation. First, he sees it. He closes his eyes and sees the spring, not as a vague hope, but as a detailed sensory reality. He sees the green shoots pushing through the dark soil. He sees the overflowing barn from his next harvest. He sees the signed contract, the completed project, the restored relationship. Second, he feels it. This is the crucial step the drifter misses. It is not enough to see the image. You must attach the corresponding emotion. What does that future success feel like? It feels like relief. It feels like pride. It feels like joy. It feels like peace. The architect allows himself to be flooded with the positive emotions of his future realized goal. This is not self-deception. This is the generation of emotional fuel. This feeling of future success is what gives him the strength to endure the labor of the present. Hope is not just a word, it is an emotion, and it can be generated on command through disciplined imagination. Finally, he acts as if, having seen the vision and felt the emotion, he begins to embody the person who has already achieved that reality. He asks, how would the person who has this success walk? How would they talk? How would they make decisions? How would they handle this current temporary setback? His imagination becomes a guide for his present actions. He begins to close the gap between who he is and who he is becoming by acting from that future state of being. This is the productive use of the imagination. It is the act of drawing the blueprint of the future so clearly in your mind that it begins to pull your present reality toward it. This brings us to the third and ultimate alchemical art, the one that governs all others. It is the sovereignty of choice. This is the philosophical climax of our entire journey. It is the principle that separates the powerful from the powerless, the free from the enslaved. The great metaphor for this is the sail and the wind. The wind is the great external. It is everything you cannot control. It is the economy. It is the weather. It is other people's opinions and actions. It is the arrival of winter. The wind is powerful, impersonal, and often unpredictable. The sail is the great internal. It is the small handful of things you can control. It is your philosophy. It is your attitude. It is your response. It is the character you have forged. It is the gratitude you choose to practice. It is the way you aim your imagination. The drifter spends his entire life consumed by the wind. He complains about the wind. He yells at the wind. He tries to command the wind to change direction. He hides from the wind. It is an exhausting, frustrating, and utterly powerless existence. He defines his life by the thing he cannot control. The architect accepts the wind. He does not waste a single moment of energy complaining about it. He knows the wind is not for him or against him. It simply is. He turns his entire focus to the one thing he can control, the set of his sail. He knows that the same wind that can drive a ship onto the rocks can also guide that same ship to a beautiful, safe harbor. The destination is not determined by the blowing of the wind, but by the skill of the sailor. This is the ultimate expression of human freedom. The freedom that no one can ever take from you. It is the freedom that exists in the space between stimulus and response. The storm hits, that is the stimulus. The drifter reacts with fear and blame. The architect responds with a calm adjustment of his sail. The insult is spoken, that is the stimulus. The drifter reacts with anger. The architect responds with the wisdom of silence. This is the daily work of forging a spring mentality. Setting the sail is choosing your attitude the moment your feet hit the floor in the morning. It is choosing to read the empowering book instead of turning on the distracting television. It is choosing gratitude over complaint in a moment of frustration. It is choosing to see a setback as a piece of data, not a personal judgment. It is the daily, hourly, moment-by-moment choice to focus on what you can control, your own inner world, and to let go of what you cannot. So, let us conclude. The mastery of winter is ultimately the mastery of the mind. The art of forging a spring mentality is the art of cultivating an internal sun. The world outside can be a dark, frozen, and unforgiving place. But if you can, through the disciplined arts of unconditional gratitude, productive imagination, and the sovereign choice to set your own sail, cultivate a source of light, warmth, and growth within you, then you will never freeze. You carry your own weather. You are your own spring. The true purpose of winter is to force you to discover this power, to force you to learn that the resources you need to survive and thrive are not outside of you, but within you. The challenge is not to endure the cold. The challenge is to learn how to generate your own light. We have walked a long and sometimes difficult path tonight. We began with a simple, unsettling feeling, the chill in the air that signals an approaching winter. We stood at the great fork in the road of human experience and met the two archetypes that live within us all. The architect who builds a life by design, and the drifter who endures a life by default. We journeyed into the dark, cold room of a wasted winter, performing a painful but necessary anatomy of the twin poisons of blame and escape, seeing them for the self-imposed prisons they truly are. From there, we stepped into the light and warmth of the architect's workshop, where we discovered the four great pillars of a productive winter: the strategic work of planning, the intellectual work of study, the moral work of introspection, and the legacy work of connection. And finally, we explored the ultimate frontier, the inner landscape of the mind, and learned the three sacred alchemical arts of forging a spring mentality: the unconditional practice of gratitude, the disciplined power of imagination, and the absolute sovereign power of choice. And now, we stand here at the end of this journey and the beginning of a new one. We have done the work. The roots have deepened. The foundation has been fortified. The question that remains is, what was it all for? The answer lies in the title of this final chapter, The Promise of the Thaw. Winter, for all its power and its unforgiving nature, is not an eternal state. It is a passage. It is a necessary, purposeful, and ultimately temporary season. And just as surely as the sun sets, it also rises. Just as surely as the tide goes out, it returns. And just as surely as winter comes, so too, by an unbreakable law of the universe, will the spring. The great challenge of life, the final test of the architect, is to hold this promise in your heart when the evidence of your senses suggests otherwise. It is to believe in the warmth of the sun while the snow is still falling. This is not blind optimism. This is a deep philosophical faith, built not on wishful thinking, but on the foundation of the work you have done. Let us look deeper at this promise. What truly is the thaw? The thaw is not merely a change in the weather. It is not just the melting of the ice on the pond. The true thaw, the one that matters, is an internal event. It is the moment the ice of fear, of doubt, and of cynicism begins to crack and break within your own soul. The external spring that you see in the world is merely a reflection of the thaw that you have first cultivated within yourself. And you must understand, spring does not arrive with a thunderous announcement. It does not send a formal invitation. It begins with whispers. The drifter, still locked in the cold room of his complaints, his ears ringing with the noise of his own negativity, misses these whispers entirely. But the architect, whose winter has been a season of quiet, focused attention, has trained himself to listen. He recognizes the subtle, almost imperceptible signs of the coming thaw. What are these signs? It might be a single, new, energizing idea that arrives in a moment of quiet reflection that is the first green shoot pushing through the frozen soil. It might be a phone call you receive from an old colleague, seemingly out of the blue, presenting a sliver of an opportunity that is the first bird returning from its long journey south. It might be a renewed sense of energy in your own body, a flicker of the old ambition you thought had died. That is the first ray of a sun that is climbing higher in the sky, even if you cannot yet feel its full warmth. Spring begins as a potential, a possibility, and you must be looking for it to see it. You must be prepared for it to seize it. The opportunities of spring are reserved for those who have spent their winter preparing for its arrival. This brings us to a timeless principle: the inseparable relationship between faith and works. The final challenge, as we have said, is to believe in spring in the midst of winter. That is faith. It is the spring mentality we have worked so hard to forge. It is the gratitude, the imagination, and the choice that keeps the internal sun burning. But the universe does not reward faith alone. It rewards faith that is accompanied by works. What are the works? The works are everything we have discussed. The works are the brutal honesty audit of your past. The works are the detailed written blueprints for your future. The works are the hours spent in the library of the mind, sharpening your skills and your philosophy. The works are the difficult, internal labor of forging your character. The works are the acts of kindness and encouragement you extend to others, even when you feel you have little to give. Faith is the belief that the seed will grow. Works is the act of planting it, watering it, and protecting it. You cannot have one without the other. The thaw is that magical, sacred moment when your internal faith is met by external opportunity, and you are ready, truly ready, because of your works. The drifter sees the opportunity and says, "I'm not ready." The architect sees the same opportunity and says, "This is what I have been preparing for." And so, as we conclude our time together, I want to leave you not with a summary, but with a commission, a charge for you to carry out as you leave this place and step into the first day of your own personal spring. Your first task is this: you must consciously leave the winter behind. The winter's work is done. Its purpose has been served. It has tested you, it has taught you, and it has strengthened you. You must now have the wisdom to let it go. Let go of the memory of the struggle. Let go of the attachment to the lessons. Take the wisdom, but leave the weight. Do not drag the hardships of your winter into the fertile fields of your spring. Give thanks for the season that has passed, and turn your face fully and completely to the season that is now arriving. Your second task is to take immediate, purposeful action. I will give you your first 3 steps on this new path. First, in the next 24 hours, you must choose your first seed. Look at the grand blueprint you designed in the quiet of your winter. Do not be overwhelmed by its scale. Ask yourself this question: what is the single most important or most courageous action I can take right now to begin planting this new spring? Is it a phone call? Is it writing the first page? Is it a difficult conversation? Is it signing up for the course? Whatever it is, identify it and do it. That single act is a declaration to the universe that you are no longer waiting for spring, you are creating it. Second, when you wake tomorrow morning, you must consciously set your sail before your feet hit the floor, before the world has a chance to impose its weather upon you. You will decide the climate of your own mind. You will practice the discipline of gratitude. You will vividly imagine your day unfolding with purpose and success. You will remind yourself that no matter what winds may blow, you are the captain of your soul, and you will set your sail toward the harbor of your own choosing. And third, you must become the teacher. Find one person in your life this week who is struggling in their own winter, and share a piece of this philosophy with them. Not with arrogance, but with humility and compassion. In teaching it, you will own it. In giving it away, you will keep it forever. This is how we begin to build a legacy of contribution. This is your commission: to leave the past, to plant the first seed, to set your sail, and to share the light. We began this journey by talking about an unchanging law that winter will always come, but we end it by embracing an even more powerful, more hopeful, and more fundamental unchanging law that spring will always follow. It is the universe's unbreakable promise of renewal. It is the law of hope. The purpose of life is not to build a shelter so perfect that you are never touched by the winter. The purpose of life is to become a person so strong, so wise, and so full of your own internal light that you can walk through the harshest of storms and learn to find the beauty in it, all while carrying the certain knowledge of the coming thaw in your heart. Do not curse the winter. Learn from it. Use it. Let it find you planning, studying, and connecting. Let it find you stronger, wiser, and more prepared than ever before. The thaw is here. The soil is resting. The seeds of your past efforts and your newfound wisdom are in your hands. And when the sun finally breaks through the clouds, and it will, you will be ready. You will be ready to plant a garden more magnificent than any you could have possibly imagined before the cold. This is the law of life, and this is the promise. Thank you for walking this long and rewarding path with me tonight. The journey through the seasons of life is one we all share, but one we don't have to walk alone. If this message has provided you with a new map, a new sense of hope, or a new tool for your workshop, consider sharing it with someone else who may be facing their own winter. And if you haven't already, I invite you once more to join our community of architects by subscribing to the channel. Together, we will continue to explore the philosophies that build lives of meaning, purpose, and success. Now, go begin your spring.